I believe that you have fallen in love before. I mean, it's a phenomenon that gives you great memories or sometimes give you very sour memories, depending on the outcome of that experience of falling in love with someone. Falling in love is actually a beautiful thing. I mean, if you've ever experienced that before, it takes over your life. It takes over every facet of your being, where you begin to think deeply about another person that you're attracted to. And in this case, I'm talking about falling in love with the opposite sex. We live in a strange world, so I have to issue a disclaimer. So I'm talking about falling in love with the opposite sex. And I'm stressing on this, okay? If I should explain to you, right, what actually is involved with this whole phenomenon of falling in love with someone, you'll be amazed, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. There are several scenarios and instances where you bump into someone and automatically there's this great attraction towards the person. And that's what we've usually termed as love at first sight, okay? Some people don't believe in that. Others also believe in that though. But it's that instant attraction towards another person that you have seen or bumped into. We also have a scenario where you begin to be friends with someone by relating with the person, possibly maybe your workmates or something. And then as time goes on, through communication, intense and consistent communication, you fall in love with the person, okay? And it's because you consistently talk with the person. And so you develop a certain level of likeness for the person. And when the communication is lowered or is not existent, you begin to miss the person. There's also another scenario where from the beginning, you just don't like this person, okay? The person irritates you because of the first impression. Maybe the person passed out a funny comment or a silly comment, and that puts you off. But you saw the person in another light or in an event where the person put out a certain good gesture and got your attention, and you were like, oh, after all, he's not a bad person or she's not a bad person. So there are several instances where people fall in love. Several instances where somebody can conclude and say that I'm in love with this person. And so let's take this relationship to another level, right? Love is actually a great thing. It's a force that the creator of the universe has placed in the inside of organisms. And when we talk about love, we're just not talking about only human beings. Animals fall in love. I mean, there are people who are in love with their dogs because of their relationship they have with them. There are also platonic love where we show a certain expression of affection towards the same sex. I mean, when you have a brother you love so much because you come from the same womb, or you love your friend so much because you share certain memory, right? But away from that, this video seeks to address the love that exists between people of the opposite sex that leads to sexual engagements because of that kind of attraction you have towards each other. So what's involved? This is clearly the soul at play. I hope you understand. It's an expression of the soul at play. I told you that man is a soul that lives in the physical body, which is powered by the spirit. And that same spirit which we call God. Never get tired of this definition because I am always going to say it. Okay, so the scenarios that I've shared with you, you meet someone and you fall in love with the person. Let me give you a practical example. I met my wife many years ago, back in college. she was speaking with a schoolmate called Bright. That happened to be her cousin. And so Bright was my schoolmate who visited his cousin in Holy Child. I went to St. Augustine's, that's our girls' school. So he visited his cousin, and I happened to deliver a letter in Holy Child, and I met Bright. I approached him, and I met my wife, and then an ordinary girl, right? So I greeted Bright. I was like, "Hey, absolutely, what's up, Charlie? This be your cousin. She be fine girl." No, that kind of conversation. And that was it. Trust me, when I came back to school, she captured my imagination throughout prep hours. I found myself writing her name in a full stop. I wasn't learning because I was deeply obsessed with her. The interesting thing is that I did not tell her that I was in love with her. But when we met again back in National Science and Maths quiz, we were both part of the team that represented our schools back in Achimota. So that was when she actually had a glimpse of my likeness for her. I mean, because the team as at that time in Holy Child got to know that I loved her, or I had an attraction for her. I can mention names. I mean, Elon Dakache, Patience Manfo, Juliet Yeririon. I mean, all the squad had an idea that I loved her. And at my end too, they had an idea that I had an attraction towards my wife then. But we were not dating, okay? Until many years after, where we decided to make a decision to walk the path of marriage. And then we agreed to be each other's spouse through marriage, right? But then there was that attraction. And it's because the thing that happened to me was as a result of overlapping and gravitation of our individual souls towards each other, which was very strong from my end, okay? Because I can boldly tell you that I got into her memory deeply, or I became very visible for her later in life, when we crossed path again, when she was doing one of her rotation at the hospital in the capital, 37 hospital. I was going to donate blood, and when we met again, she mentioned my name, my local name. And anybody that mentions that name means that the person has a certain company with me that dates way back. Okay, so from there, we started communicating very often, and that's how we nurtured our relationship onto marriage. Okay, so this phenomenon is a resultant of the overlapping of the soul. Okay, and it was so strong on my side because I began to think deeply about my wife. Even though I was engaged with the other women, that I wasn't in relationships with them, I had at the back of my mind that there's this one person that anytime she shows up, even when I'm exchanging vows, would cause a certain reaction. Okay? And it's because there's a concept of what we call soulmate. Soulmate is when you have determined that you know your soul so well, and then you have identified another soul that compensates your soul. That is a mate to your soul. So it's not more like you are a soul looking for somebody to suppress or somebody to rule over. The person is your mate. So that soul is your mate. In other words, in every sense of the word, she or he has the equal capacity to help you on the course or the journey that you are taking. Okay? So I see my wife as a mate. Even though in this institution of marriage, I am seen as the head, she's helping me to achieve the vision for the relationship we have called marriage. And so I can boldly tell you that my wife is a soulmate. Now, this reaction or that feeling that you get within the members of your soul, that you have a certain deep affection for this person, is as a result of the function of the soul. Okay? And so, for example, with a scenario where you fall in love with someone so deeply, it's because you consistently meditate on the person. Yes, you are involved with a process of meditation where you deeply think about the person. Maybe it starts from the physical end of this whole phenomenon. It can start from the person's appearance, the person's personality, or the way the person carries him or herself around, or the way the person talks. And so physically, you get an attraction towards the person that goes through the interface of your five senses onto your mind, which is also another interface onto your soul. Okay? So the person begins to have an impression on your mind. So when the person is away or the person is not within reach, and you first have seen the person through the interface of your eyes, your sight, you go home and you begin to think about the person, how welcoming the person was, the tone of the person's voice, and then you begin to meditate upon it in your mind. The consistent execution or exercise of that makes a deposit onto your soul, a fine filtered deposit onto your soul. Okay? And that's where people label it, it enters your subconscious. You understand? So at this moment, the person captures your entire soul because of the process of repetition by thinking about the person. And then you move on to wanting to be in the person's space, and that's where you begin to engage in physical activities like dating, going on movie nights, trying to look out for the person, consistent communication over the phone, chatting and texting the person, because you always want to hear from the person. It is through this engagement that your soul expands and causes an overlap. And so once your soul overlaps, you begin to exchange data. Like I said, anytime a device falls within the hotspot of a Wi-Fi, it leaves an imprint. So I give a practical example. If you have a Wi-Fi or your mobile device, if you ever have activated your hotspot, go through the hotspot, you realize that it is registered previous connections of other mobile devices that have connected to your phone or your Wi-Fi. And you can see that through a series of numbers that are separated by colons, right? What you call the MAC address. So you can have something like 00 colon AC colon FD or F1 colon B2, something like that. It registers that with your phone. It's the same thing with the human soul. And so when this particular person, because you keep meeting people, right, and your soul overlaps with them, but this particular person, when you meet the person, leaves a deep impression onto your soul, gives you a certain deep feeling, a deep reaction, a sweetness of reaction onto your soul, right? It's because the person has left a certain data. There's an exchange of data. And that data gives you a certain reaction within the members of your soul. And so your emotions are activated and a will is taken. And what's this will? I always want to be with the person. So you save the person's number, you call the person now and then, you have video chats or video calls, you have regular chats, or you exchange pleasantries, or you want to be in the physical space of the person by going out for dates, programs, and all of that. So when it gets intense and deep and you're convinced that this person can walk the path of marriage with you, then you take a decision to marry the person. And these are all functions of the soul. And that's why we call the whole process that I have met my soulmate. Okay? So, like I said, marriage, even though people believe it's physical, it's largely a function of the soul. It's an interplay of the soul, largely speaking. Because sometimes when you're physically tired of seeing someone, it's the sweetness of the function of the soul that comes into play. And that function is called memory. And that is why I advise that anytime you believe that this is your soulmate, right? You create good memories together, because in the absence of the pressing, that is what will keep you going when you have good memories. Yeah. The reason why you get negative feeling when you think about your ex, or you get a good feeling when you think about your ex, or when you think about your present partner, or when you think about your spouse, is because of the memory that you share. It's either the memory is negative or it's positive, right? And so building great memories as a couple is very important, because it's a function of your soul. Once you have great memories, one of the things I enjoy with my wife is when we are then conversing or we're watching a movie together, or we are just at our desk trying to work, or we find ourselves in a program. We visit memories back in college, back in the times where we've been together, and they are sacred memories for us. We love it. It bonds us, it brings us closer, because at that moment we are revisiting data, the expression of data information existing in our soul. So we are exchanging it, because at that moment our soul is overlapping and becoming one, because we are close. And so the whole feeling and effect of falling in love with someone means that your soul is finding a close expression with another soul that gravitates towards each other. And the exchange of data is so intense and deep that you cannot do away with it, even when the person is not inside. Then you can say that, I miss you. I miss this person. And I love the person's company. And I always want to share my life with that person, walk the path of marriage with that person. All of these is a function and an expression of the soul. I'll go deeper into it in subsequent videos. I'm the Question Mind Surgeon. If you have any question, kindly comment. Like this video, share it with your family and friends. Let me reach a wider audience. And please subscribe to this channel.